Yeah, welcome back, SMX Insider. Hope you enjoyed our special edition last weekend as we previewed the Monster Energy AMA Amateur National Championship at Loretta Lynn. We're back at our normal spots and back to the SuperMotocross World Championship. We're going to preview round 26 and the Pro Motocross Championship at the legendary Unadilla. 2 weekends off, JT, for the pro guys, and at the right time. A lot of guys were pretty beat down, worn down, leaving Washougal. Do you think that break might change things as everyone has a chance to refresh before this Saturday?
Well, that's the big question, right? Because I think some of these riders, maybe their bodies needed a break, but momentum-wise, they would have liked to continue racing. Think about Chase Sexton on a 7-moto win streak. He probably wanted to keep that thing rolling, even though he would enjoy some time off. But I think for some of the other riders, the riders that really had started to struggle, think about Hunter Lawrence, they needed a break, right? They needed to go reset and let their bodies kind of just rest for a few days, try to come back stronger. I think about Chance Hymas as well. Those riders, this break could not have come at a better time. So we'll see who handled it in the best way and who can bring their best stuff to Unadilla.
You know, it was really tempting, I think, when you heard, even Sexton said he was pretty worn down by Washougal, to think all these riders should just take maximum time off. But I actually heard you say that you as a racer, if you did take too much time off, you wouldn't feel as sharp. So there really is a balance.
Yeah, I think it's really important to get back into your routine, especially this week leading up to Unadilla. And remember, there's a lot of weather down in Florida where these guys ride during the week. So they may not be able to practice, but that is critically important to get back to that routine, kind of reset your body. Like, hey, we're going racing again. I need you to respond on Saturdays the way it was and not go into recovery mode the way maybe that first week was. So there's a lot of moving parts in here. And I think it's just very interesting to see who did it correctly, maybe who rested the perfect amount. And again, we got a 3-race stretch here to decide these championships, and they've got to show up.
Hey, speaking of moving parts, we'll get into this deeper in this episode, but Cooper Webb is going to return this weekend. Kent Roczen, maybe even Justin Barcia could be back, so that's going to shake things up too.
Yeah, it's great to have some of these stars returning to the sport, and all of this is in anticipation for the SMX playoffs in September, right? And that's the variable we keep coming back to is I don't believe we would have seen any of those 3 come back and race this weekend or any of the final 3 pro motocross rounds without those looming playoffs. So we get to watch them race 3 motocross races, and then we think that they're going to be back to 100% when we roll into Charlotte.
Yeah, that's so cool for both seeding and to just get gate drops, and maybe even Eli Tomac before we're done with Pro Motocross, which again, you wouldn't see ever in a season without the SMX playoffs looming. We're going to preview Unadilla in another way. We'll tell you how to watch it. 10 a.m. will be Eastern. 10 a.m. Eastern will be our coverage of Race Day Live presented by motosport.com. That is our 1-hour qualifying show, and the motos begin at 1 p.m. East. It's all in upstate New York. You can watch on Peacock or the SMX Video Pass outside the United States. Back to the regular schedule, back to one of the traditional tracks. We'll talk about all of that in this episode. Let's turn the card sideways here. 30-second board, hot topics in the sport. Let's follow up on Loretta Lynn's Drew Adams, Monster Energy Pro Circuit Kawasaki, probably the favorite coming into Loretta's, and JT, he delivered. He won 5 out of his 6 motos and both of the pro sport titles he was going for. So he wins the AMA Nicky Hayden Amateur Horizon Award. But sometimes that award is a huge shock. Sometimes it's the best guy ends up proving why he's the best guy. I'm going to put Drew Adams in that latter category. We know he's good. He proved he's good.
Yeah, he was the class of the field. He made me nervous, though, that first moto. You just wondered, was this going to come apart on him, the most important week of the year as far as his amateur status goes? And then he rallied. He really fixed those problems, got the starts, really finished every single moto really strong, set great lap time. So he looks like he's the real deal. Now he's got to step up and start it all over again and jump into the deep end of the pond with the professionals.
We'll see him at Ironman racing his first professional race, although we have seen him racing up in Canada actually this summer where he's battling for their 250 title. So get ready for Ironman. We'll see what Drew Adams has under that Pro Circuit Kawasaki tent. Okay, also from Loretta's, we have a bunch of different amateur levels that will be competing as part of the SMX playoffs. We'll start this with the Electric KTM Junior Division that'll race at the Las Vegas World Championship finale, similar to the KTM Junior Supercross Challenge. They'll be on the electric 50cc size KTMs. The top 15 from that class at Loretta's, Mickey Fluhart being the champion, get to race there. So a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for these kids, JT, to race in Las Vegas.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? They have this success at Loretta Lynn's, and they think that's enough, but yet they have this looming trip to Las Vegas to showcase their skills in front of a gigantic crowd that will be there for the finale as well.
Yeah, it's also key to know that KTM Junior Challenge that you see at Monster Energy Supercross, that's a random draw. People enter, and if you're lucky, you get in. This one at the World Championship is the only one you earn it. It's the top 15 fastest. So the racing should be really good with these kids at Las Vegas. And then that's just a recurring theme here. We'll have a variety of classes. We have 65s racing at Charlotte. And JT, I think that stole the show last year.
It certainly did. That little ripper that was jumping that triple, I was walking alongside, and it scared me. I couldn't believe it. So let's hope for more action like that, because we're already going to have this great show and these riders going after a SuperMotocross World Championship. But to add that level of amateur action to it, it just brings a whole nother dynamic to it.
Top 5 from the 65, 10 to 11 at Loretta's automatically get in, led by Jaden Smart, who won that title. They will also fill that field. They're going to go to the teams and the coaches and whatnot to make sure that we have 65cc riders who are capable of racing on a track at that level to make sure everybody's safe. Then we'll go to Texas. We'll have the Super Minis racing there. Aiden Zing, relatively unknown before the week at Loretta's. He ended up winning one of the Super Mini titles. But one of our buddies, JT, Paul Parabinos, was pumping this kid up. So I'm watching it riding in California all year. And that's what happens. Breakout star.
Yeah, these are the stars of tomorrow, regardless of which age group, and their development is always staggered. Some riders really blossom at different times. I myself, I really didn't find my speed until I was around 14 or 15 years old, and then it just kind of took off from there. So it's always interesting to see when these guys show up. And to your point, Aiden Zing arrived at Loretta Lynn, so we'll see what he can do at these playoff rounds.
Yep. Okay, so that's Super Minis, again, racing in Texas. And then the 250 World All-Stars will race at the World Championship in Las Vegas, including Drew Adams, who is on the invite list, who we talked about earlier, and Cole Davies. It should be fun to see those two battle it out again, as they did in Futures many times. Liam Aloff, Parker Ross, just amongst the group of A riders. But here's a rider I want to talk about. Caden Dudney was the best B rider at Loretta's. He had the fastest lap times of the week. You know how this game works, JT. The difference between B and A these days, a guy like Dudney can get in there at this World All-Stars race and maybe even win.
Yeah, he really dominated the week, and I think he showed a lot of top-end speed. And there's some track maintenance variables in there. That's how Loretta Lynn's works, but I think he showed that he has what it takes, and now he's going to take the jump up. He's going to have to race against guys that he did not race against at Loretta Lynn's. And that's what this is all about, leveling up. Can you beat those riders? Then you level up again, and that's a dynamic he will face the rest of his career, hopefully all the way into the elite status of the 450 Pro Motocross and Monster Energy Supercross Championship. So this is something he's going to have to get used to, and it'll be great to see how he stacks up.
And it's really a renaissance for Kawasaki, because both Dudney and Adams, the best A and B riders, are Kawasaki prospects. They've had a bit of a renaissance on the pro side with great success. With Levi Kitchen, we had that spectacular win by Ty Masterpool, and they're going to add to their ranks. This came early. Garrett Marchbanks, he's now on pro circuit. He used to race for them years ago. He's no longer with Club MX, and here's the big thing, JT. He's switching to a 250, and it's going to start at Unadilla.
Yeah, and all of this, in my mind, is to chase that SuperMotocross World Championship playoff. He's a handful of points out, but he's got a task on his hand, because he's got to adapt to a new team, a new motorcycle, drop back down to the 250, and he has no time to acclimate. He has to be good right away if he wants to secure one of those gate picks rolling into Charlotte. So he certainly has the talent. We've seen it on the 450. We've seen it on this exact team going back to 2020 in Monster Energy Supercross. Remember, he won the Daytona Supercross on this exact team. So I think everything's in place. He just doesn't have any time to waste. He's got to make every single moto count.
Yeah, it's a whole new world here for riders leaving teams early instead of waiting to the offseason. So Marchbanks splits with Club MX. Now he's a pro circuit. And this is a good time to look at those SMX standings. Now, if you look at the top of them in the 250 division, it's no surprise Hayden Deegan has a giant lead. He was close to a title in Monster Energy Supercross and pulling away in the Pro Motocross standings. Where it starts to get interesting is in the back. So Marchbanks is actually 21st. You have to be top 20 to guarantee your spot into the motos. He's 4 points behind Dylan Schwartz. because Schwartz isn't as big a name as Marchbanks, and he's on a Suzuki team and not the mighty Pro Circuit Kawasaki team, JT, I think it would seem like a slam dunk case that Marchbanks is going to get in. I don't know. Schwartz is underrated. Schwartz has been very good as of late.
Yeah, Schwartz is sneaky good, and I had the opportunity to speak to his team owner, Myron Short, and Myron explained that he has just started now practicing. He was racing without practicing during the week, so for us to assume that Marchbanks is going to jump in and be better than Schwartz each and every time as Schwartz himself is improving, maybe a little bit hasty. So it's going to be an interesting thing to watch these final 6 motos to see who can best the other. They know what's at stake here. They both are going to be going after the same position. And also, can they move up the ladder? Can they go chase those riders in front of them? So it may just be one spot up for grabs, but these are the races within a race. Sure, the Hayden Deegan, we're going to watch who wins that championship. There's so much podium battling at the front, but these final few bubble spots have added a whole new dimension to what we already loved about the sport.
Now let's go to the 250 standings. There's the Hayden Deegan mention. I said he's pulling away in the Pro Motocross standings. A 54-point lead. Actually, if he can hold serve and maintain a 50-plus point lead after the next race at Budds Creek, he could wrap the championship up early.
Yeah, which is remarkable, right? We knew he would be great coming out of last season, but remember, anything can happen. We thought he was going to be in the fight all the way to the end going into Unadilla a year ago, and things went incredibly sideways. So we just can't get ahead of ourselves. Things happen. That's literally why they hold the races instead of just handing out trophies for who everyone thinks the best rider is. So he's got to finish the deal here. It feels like he's on his way, but you have to execute, and everything has to kind of hold together. No one saw that, mechanical DNF happening last year, but there we were.
And if you're a Hayden Deegan fan, and we know there are a lot, watch closely at Unadilla. If he leaves with a 50-plus point lead this Saturday, you might want to get your tickets to come to Budds Creek and see him celebrate potentially a big championship a week before the finale at Ironman. We've seen that happen a lot at Budds. I remember Zach Osborne, Aaron Plessinger, they won their 250 titles there. So you might want to go to that one. That could be cool. As for the rest of the field, the 450s have a big storyline. We touched on this at the top. Cooper Webb back from a thumb injury. We might get Justin Barsha back. His knees were banged up earlier in the year. And Ken Roczen's going to race. You never know. You never, ever know what Ken Roczen, what you're going to get. JT, you seem to think at Unadilla, we might get a really good Ken Roczen coming off of a leg injury.
I do, and I think the weather is an underrated part of this story too, because if storms roll in there and we get a muddy, cool Unadilla, a rider like Ken Roczen, who's coming off of injury, who may not be as physically fit as a Chase Sexton or a Hunter Lawrence because they've been racing all year long, that's going to go out the window. They won't be facing such brutal conditions as far as fitness goes. You think about Ken Roczen last year at High Point in really ruddy, soft, tricky conditions, how capable he was. I don't think it's a stretch to see Ken Roczen come in here and be on the podium, at least in a moto, and fighting up front. I believe that's what Ken Roczen expects out of himself. And usually when he's on point like that, he comes in and does it. So I think everything's on the table for Kenny.
Now, Webb's going to race the final 3 races, so that'll be a building process. It'll be fun to see where Webb fits in. But Roczen throwing another typical Roczen, where did this come from curveball. He's going to race Ironman on a 250. What? What is that?
I will be racing a RMZ 250 at Ironman. Yep, you heard that right. I'm going to be mixing it up with the kids. Super excited about it. It's been about 100 years since I've ridden a 250 for real. And yeah, I figured why not have a little bit of fun, right? I hope you guys enjoy it.
This caught everybody by surprise. Maybe there were a few people on the planet that kind of said, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I was not one of those people. So as a fan and someone who gets to talk about these races on the broadcast, this is amazing because we truly don't know what's going to happen. Can he mix it up with Hayden Deegan and Hymas? I think so. But at the same time, he's on an RMZ 250, which we know is a little bit behind in development. They're still chasing those other OEMs to get back to their former glory. So what does that look like when he hits the track in Ironman? It's going to be a great storyline to follow, but we get to see what he's really got at Unadilla before we even have to worry about that.
Yes, I don't think anyone had a Hayden Deegan, Ken Roczen rivalry on the radar this year, but we might get it for one race. But before that, we have to see how Roczen and Webb perform coming back from injury. So let's catch up with Dr. Joe McGinley for this week's SMX Medical Update. And there's Dr. Joe. Okay, so let's talk about riders returning from injuries. You and I were lucky enough to run into Cooper Webb at Loretta's. He's coming back from the thumb injury. So what do we need to think about with that type of return?
Well, finally, good news. We're usually talking about riders getting hurt and not racing. Now we're talking about someone coming back from an injury and coming back, and it's going to be great for the 450 class. So, yeah, you and I had a chance to catch up with Coop, and he gave us a lot more detail about his injury and his recovery. He did have a grade 3 injury of that UCL of the thumb. Technically, it's called a skier's injury, but I think you now coined the phrase motocross. That maybe we take that a step further, call it an SMX thumb.
Yeah.
But he is coming back. He's going to be back here for Unadilla. He looked great. The scar looked healed. He said he's been doing quite a bit of stuff to take care of that. He's feeling strong on the bike and excited to get back out there.
So this weekend for Cooper Webb, what I'm thinking about is in between motos. Is this going to be something where he's going to have to be icing that, thinking about it throughout the day? Or at this point of recovery, is he just going to be worried about the rest of it, getting cooled down and these things? Just that recovery part, is it still going to be a process or a factor as the race day goes on?
Yeah, most likely both. The normal recovery in between motos, that's going to be the primary concern. The thumb will be a little bit sore. This is his first competitive race back. He's been back on the bike for a few weeks now riding. So a lot of the aches and pains have likely been sorted out. But anytime you have an injury, anytime you have a surgery, and these guys are pushing the limits of how quick you come back, it's likely going to be a little irritated and swollen. If I were him, even if it wasn't, I would throw some ice on it just in case, just as part of that recovery and preparation in between motos. But yeah, I would expect it to be a little bit sore as the day goes on and he's out there competing at the front of the pack.
All right, yeah, and it's a little gift for us too, right? Because we get more talent back on the track more quickly, and it should be fun this weekend. And we'll talk to you next week, Dr. Joe. Okay, and now back to our 30-second board. When we last left you folks, Chase Sexton was on a roll, 7 consecutive moto wins, and he has one at Unadilla before JT, so he's looking very formidable right now.
Yeah, he's really found his stride, and I'm just going to say it. Everything changed when Jet Lawrence exited this series. Now, you can argue about whether it's mental or physical for Chase. I think he looks up and down the starting line and believes he's the best rider, which is a stark difference from the way he looked at it when Jet was there. And the results are backing that up. To win 7 straight motos on the backside of that is really hard to argue against. So I think he looks at this is his championship to lose. And when you look at the results, you look at the way everybody else is responding to him taking charge, why would we not think it's going to continue?
You could look at the 450 standings here and get an idea. When Jet went out, Hunter Lawrence was actually the point leader. They had one huge battle at Redbud. Hunter crashed. And since then, Sexton has opened up a points lead very quickly. In fact, the real battle now is Aaron Plessinger, Justin Cooper for third. They're the closest to this group.
The battle for those podiums down the stretch will be very interesting to see who can come away with third place in this championship.
And one big factor will be Unadilla, Heartbreak Hill. Every time you think you've got a championship figured out, you mentioned the weather. This track has kind of got these weird vibes around it through the years. That's kind of what makes it so legendary. So take us for a little ride here and preview the track.
Well, this is a track that's changed tremendously over the years, and I think it started out 50 years ago as one of the best tracks in the world. That slowly morphed. A lot of that dirt left the surface, and it got very, very rocky and very hard packed. Well, they have done a great job bringing that topsoil back in and making it a track that riders look forward to. Now, the weather this weekend could change all of that. We are looking at a lot of rain coming in this weekend, and this track will be a quagmire if we get that type of rain, really deep, really tricky. So just watch for that. If we get great weather, the track will be great. But if it does not, you think about the Motocross Designations in '87, like how those races looked in the mud over the years, we could be in for a rough weekend in upstate New York.
Okay, let's get a little deeper into Unadilla. We bring in our statistician, Clinton Fowler. Time for SMX Fax Unadilla edition. Talk about this track and some of the trends that you've seen here lately.
Yeah, Weege, absolutely incredible. Out of the last 5 years we've been to Unadilla, we've had 9 of the 10 winners be international riders. So really impressive performance from non-US guys at that track. The only guy to win was Chase Sexton in the 450 class in 2022. He went 1-1 for first overall. It was the second time he's ever swept motos for a victory. Pretty impressive day for him. The last time in the 250s was 2017 when Jeremy Martin won. JT, what sticks out for me here is actually Hunter Lawrence. As we're looking forward in the 250s, Unadilla is one of his best classes. But my question to you, JT, can he win his first overall and stop Chase Sexton's moto win streak?
Well, for Hunter, this is clearly a track where he's found success. But I believe to win in the 450 class against this level of competition, you have to be the best guy. You're not going to be able to get to consistent your way to a win. And you look at Chase Sexton, who's really found his stride. He's won 7 motos in a row. He needs to get back to that guy that could win motos. You think about how good he was at Thunder Valley. We have not seen that level of Hunter Lawrence since maybe arguably the crash at Redbud. So can he be on the podium? Sure. He's been there all season long, but to win, I firmly believe he has to come out and prove that he's the fastest guy on the racetrack, not just one that gets good starts and kind of hangs in there for 35 minutes.
And the problem is it's trending the wrong direction, right? From going to maybe the second best guy behind Sexton, he ends up off the podium completely at Washougal, which opened up this wild stat of Honda 450 podium streaks. Talk about that a little bit, Clinton.
Yeah, Weege, absolutely incredible. Honda had been on the podium for 30 straight rounds, nearly 3 years up until Washougal. The last time they hadn't been on the podium was back at the last round in 2021. And at that time, Chase Sexton, who was riding for Honda, was out injured for the last 2 rounds of the season, and Ken Roczen finished a 9th overall that day. And so Honda hadn't been on the podium. So it had been 3 years. And, you know, JT, it's absolutely incredible when you look at the top 10 list of manufacturer podium streaks. Honda has the top 3. The longest ever was 36 rounds back 2001 to 2004. That was in the era of Ricky Carmichael riding for Honda. He had been on the podium for 35 of those 36 rounds, but it wasn't just him. There was 7 other riders on the podium. So Honda as a whole has been really impressive. What do you see when you look at this last streak that included Roczen, Sexton, Jet Lawrence, and Hunter Lawrence that makes Honda so special?
Well, when you dig deeper into it, the bulk of those have been between Chase Sexton and Jet Lawrence, right? Neither of those two are competing on a Honda at the next 3 rounds. So that really puts pressure on Hunter to keep up that level of excellence to maybe start a new streak.
Anything else, Clinton, that you look at on the radar headed into this weekend?
Yeah, there's one other piece that's on my radar here over the next 2 weekends, and that is Hayden Deegan is on the cusp of clinching his first championship. I don't think that's going to happen at Unadilla. A lot of things would have to happen there. But at Budds Creek, as long as he has a 50-point lead, he can clinch his championship. He's currently got a 54-point lead over Tom Vial and a 70-point lead over Levi Kitchen. So that gives him kind of a 4-point cushion over Vial and a 20-point cushion over Kitchen. And so if he can maintain that going into Budds Creek, it's looking really good for him to wrap up his first title with 1 round to go, JT, and that would be quite the accomplishment.
Yeah, and I think in a normal environment, that would be the goal. Have a great Unadilla, go and win your first championship at Budds Creek. But when I look at the weather forecast, I think you have to be a little bit careful and just understand what can go wrong in conditions like we might have at Unadilla. Don't worry about winning everything. Like, make sure that your championship status stays intact. Make sure that story continues through this weekend. Last year we talked about it. He had a DNF at this race that completely changed the way the rest of that championship would go. That is what you can't have happen. You can't have some sort of mud-related incident, a crash, mechanical DNF to derail everything that you think is going to happen. So sure, if he can win that title at Budds Creek, that's fantastic, but the weather is such a big variable. It's the equalizer in this sport. He needs to make sure that when he leaves Unadilla, the championship looks just the way it did coming into Unadilla.
Yeah, and let's not forget that guy second to him in points is what, Clinton? An international rider, right? So this could be good for Vial this weekend.
It could be. I would definitely watch him as a potential contender for the win this weekend, guys.
Yep. And he needs those points. We'll see what happens at Unadilla, and we'll talk to you next week, Clinton.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, that's a wrap on this episode of SMX Insider. We're headed to Unadilla. We'll once again show you how and where to watch it. Everything will be on Peacock or the SMX Video Pass. Starts at 10 a.m. Eastern on Saturday. That's qualifying coverage presented by motosport.com, Race Day Live. And then the motos start at 1 o'clock, 4+ straight hours of live coverage, again on Peacock or the SMX Video Pass. But it's not just about Unadilla. Unadilla has its own place for sure, one of the unique storied tracks in the championship. This is the stretch run, 6 motos to go, 3 straight weekends to determine the Pro Motocross Championships and JT, the seeding for the playoffs. So this is it. This is clutch time.
Yeah, hopefully the riders and the teams and everybody got some well-needed rest. But here we go. 6 races in the next 7 weekends to determine it all. We're going to determine the Pro Motocross champions, and then we're rolling right into the playoffs after a weekend off to determine the second year of the SuperMotocross World Championship. So I'm excited for it. I got some time away, but man, it is an exciting time in front of us all the way through the end of September.
Yeah, and if you don't believe us, just remember, you're not getting Ken Roczen and Cooper Webb and whoever else might come back over the next few weeks if those playoffs weren't looming. So this is a different time in the sport and a really exciting one. So we'll see you this Saturday and see who can rally late in the season.